Imagine waking up to find a stranger watching you sleep, or realizing someone has been following you for weeks, knowing your every move. They say paranoia is just a heightened sense of awareness. But what if the fear crawling up your spine is real? What if the shadow lingering outside your window isn't just a trick of the light? Tonight, we dive into 8 real-life stalker horror stories, straight from Reddit accounts so chilling, they'll make you question the safety of your own home. As the rain falls and darkness settles in, let these voices guide you through encounters with relentless pursuers, unseen watchers, and obsessions that turned into nightmares. But be warned, some of these stalkers never got caught. Stay with us until the end. And if you feel like someone's watching you after this, don't ignore it. Subscribe now, because reality is far more terrifying than fiction. I still check my locks 3 times before bed, and I cannot sleep unless my back is against a wall. College was supposed to be my fresh start, my chance to reinvent myself after high school, but instead, it became the setting for the most terrifying months of my life. It started so small that I almost missed the warning signs. My first week in the dorms, I noticed him in 3 of my classes, always choosing seats where he could see me clearly. I did not think much of it. Our campus was small, and overlap happened, but then I started noticing him in places he had no reason to be, like waiting outside my early American literature class, even though he was not enrolled, or suddenly appearing in the same corner of the library where I liked to study. I tried to brush it off as coincidence, but deep down, a voice was screaming that something was very wrong. The first note appeared under my door on a Tuesday morning, a small folded paper with lyrics from a song I had mentioned liking during class discussion. How thoughtful, I initially thought, until I realized I had never told anyone my room number, not even my closest friends from orientation week. When I mentioned this to my roommate, she just laughed and said I probably mentioned it without remembering. But I knew I had been careful, intentionally protecting my privacy after a bad experience in high school. The second note came 3 days later, this one less friendly, with lyrics about watching someone sleep and knowing all their secrets. I started noticing other things too, like my shower items being slightly moved, or my laptop being in a different position than how I left it. I began taking photos of how I arranged my things before leaving, comparing them when I returned, confirming I was not imagining the subtle differences. One night, coming back late from the library, I caught him standing in the stairwell near my floor, just staring at the wall. When I asked if he was okay, he smiled too widely and said he was just waiting for someone. I hurried past him, and when I looked back from my doorway, he was still there, watching me with that same stretched smile. I started varying my routines, taking different paths to class, studying in public places, never walking alone after dark. But he always found me, as if he knew my schedule better than I did. The messages intensified, progressing from song lyrics to his own words, descriptions of what I wore each day, comments about conversations he could only know if he had been listening outside my door. The worst was when he slipped a note mentioning how pretty my hair looked when I was sleeping. I had not been sleeping well for weeks at that point, keeping my desk chair propped against the door handle each night. My roommate started staying with her boyfriend off campus, saying the stress in our room was too much. I felt abandoned and more vulnerable than ever. The turning point came in our shared English class. Our professor assigned a creative writing exercise, asking us to write a short story from an unexpected perspective. When my stalker volunteered to read his piece aloud, my blood froze as he began describing in vivid detail how it felt to stand outside a dorm room late at night, listening to the soft breathing of the girl inside, imagining what would happen if the door was unlocked. He wrote about leaving notes, about following someone across campus, about memorizing her schedule and habits. He made eye contact with me throughout the reading, and I could not breathe, could not move, feeling every person in the room turn to look at me as they realized who he was describing. My professor, bless her, cut him off mid-sentence and dismissed class early. She asked me to stay behind, concern etched across her face, and gently suggested we go to campus security together. I showed her the collection of notes I had been saving as evidence, and she looked physically ill as she read them, especially the most recent one that contained lyrics about burning down a building to keep someone inside forever. The university hearing that followed was one of the hardest days of my life. I had to sit in the same room as him, recount every incident, show the evidence, all while he watched me with those empty eyes. He claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that his story was fiction, that the notes were friendly gestures being misinterpreted by an overly sensitive girl. But his roommate testified about finding a journal filled with entries about me, about the shrine of stolen items he had collected. Small things I had not even noticed were missing: a hair tie, a pen, a coffee receipt. The roommate described being afraid to sleep in the same room, hearing him whisper my name in his sleep. I never learned the official outcome of the hearing due to privacy policies, but he was not on campus the following semester. I thought it was over, that I could finally breathe again, until his roommate approached me in the dining hall months later. "You ruined his life," he hissed at me. "They kicked him out because of you, all because you could not take a compliment." I wanted to scream that stalking is not a compliment, that fearing for your safety is not flattery, but I just walked away, shaking so badly I spilled my tray. I transferred schools at the end of that year, moving across the country where I thought I would be safe. But sometimes, when I check my social media, I find accounts with no photos that have been following me for exactly the same length of time as each new platform I join. And last week, a letter arrived at my parents' house, forwarded from my old address, containing just a single line: "I found you again." Sometimes I wonder if I will ever truly escape his shadow, or if I will spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, waiting for the notes to start appearing again. After all, he knows what I look like when I am sleeping. I always thought the scariest stories were the ones people whispered about in dark rooms, the kind where a shadow moves in the hallway when you know you are home alone, or when a stranger stands outside your house just watching. But those are the stories that happen to other people, not to me, not in my quiet little life where I go to work, come home, and watch the same television shows every night. My biggest concern was making sure I did not forget to take out the trash on Thursdays. But that all changed the night I received a message from a number I did not recognize. There was no text, just a single photo attached. I opened it, expecting some spam or a wrong number, but my breath caught in my throat when I saw what it was. The picture was of me, entering my own house. Same jacket, same briefcase in my hand, even the way I always pushed the door open with my shoulder because my keys were still in the lock. But I had just gotten home. My heart pounded as I checked the timestamp. It was taken only minutes ago. Someone had been outside, close enough to take a picture. I rushed to the window, peering out into the darkness. Nothing. The street was quiet. My neighbor's lights were off. I checked the locks twice, then 3 times. My hands trembled as I typed out a reply, asking who they were. No response. A deep pit of unease settled in my stomach. Maybe it was a prank, a stupid joke. But the longer I stared at that picture, the more wrong it felt. I had not heard anyone outside. No footsteps, no rustling, just silence. I forced myself to calm down. Maybe someone was just messing with me. I turned on every light in the house, checked the security camera feed. Nothing there either, but I could not shake the feeling that I was being watched. I barely slept that night, every small noise making me sit up and listen. But morning came, and nothing happened. A few days passed, and I almost convinced myself it was just some weird glitch, a mistake, until another message came. This time, there was text. Thought you should know I am still watching. My stomach turned to ice. The photo attached was worse than the first. It was me again, sitting on my couch, watching television. The angle was from outside the window, meaning whoever took it had been standing right outside, looking in. I jumped up and yanked the curtains shut, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. This was not just some prank. Someone was watching me, standing outside in the dark, close enough to see into my home. I called the police immediately. An officer came by, took a report, and looked around the house. No signs of forced entry, no footprints, no proof. Just me sounding paranoid. But he did not dismiss me completely. He said they would increase patrols in the area and that I should be careful. That night, I slept with a kitchen knife under my pillow. The messages kept coming. Always at night. Always a new picture. Me brushing my teeth. Me turning off the lights before bed. Me locking the front door. Every time I thought I was alone. But I was never alone. I changed my routine. Started coming home at different hours. Never leaving my windows uncovered. But still, the photos came. The police set up surveillance, but nothing ever happened when they were around. No messages, no pictures. It was like whoever was doing this knew when they were watching. My life became a prison of fear. I barely ate, barely slept. Every shadow outside felt like a figure standing just beyond my sight. Then, one night, the messages stopped. A week passed, then two. Nothing. No photos, no taunts. I felt relief slowly creep in, like waking from a long nightmare. The police said they might have scared the person off, but they still had no leads. I started to believe it was over, that whoever had been tormenting me had moved on. But then, 3 weeks later, I got one final message. It was from a different number this time, but the words were the same. Thought you should know I am still watching. My chest tightened as I hesitated before opening the picture. When I did, I almost dropped my phone. It was not of me. It was of my bedroom, taken from the corner near my closet. And in the bottom right corner of the image, barely visible in the dim light, was the shadowy outline of a figure. The police found nothing when they arrived. No forced entry, no signs of anyone hiding in the house. Just my phone on the floor where I had dropped it, and my closet door slightly ajar when I knew for a fact it had been shut. They told me to stay somewhere else for a while, but I knew, deep down, it did not matter where I went, because they had never been outside. They had been inside all along. I tried convincing myself that maybe I had been careless, that maybe I had left a window unlocked or a door slightly ajar. But I had checked everything, double and triple checked. My paranoia had turned into a sickening certainty. I was not alone in that house, and I had never been. The very thought sent chills down my spine. I could feel their eyes on me, even in broad daylight, when the sun poured through the windows, and I should have felt safe. But safety was an illusion. I packed a bag and left that house behind, moving in with a friend for the time being. But even there, I could not escape the feeling that I was being watched. Then, just when I thought it was over, I woke up in the middle of the night to find my phone vibrating on the nightstand. A new message. My hands trembled as I reached for it. The photo was of me, sleeping, taken from inside the room. My blood ran cold. I scrambled out of bed, turned on every light, and searched the entire apartment. My friend, who had been asleep in the next room, rushed out, alarmed by my panic. But there was nothing, no one, just that single image, proof that the nightmare was far from over. The locks had not been tampered with. The windows were shut tight, but someone had been there. They were always there. The police did what they could, but there was never any evidence, never any trace of who was doing this. I changed numbers, moved to a new place, stopped using social media, but deep inside, I knew it did not matter. No matter where I went, no matter how careful I was, they would always find me. The last message I received was months later. It came in the middle of the night, waking me from an uneasy sleep. I almost did not want to look, but I could not stop myself. The message was just 2 words: found you. I stared at the screen, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. I turned my head slowly, afraid of what I might see. And there, just beyond the dim glow of my phone, was the shape of a person standing in the darkness of my room, watching, waiting. I still remember that night so clearly, like a stain on my memory that refuses to fade. It started like any other evening, nothing unusual, nothing strange, just the quiet comfort of routine. I had left work late, the kind of late where the streets are almost empty, and the world feels like it belongs to you alone. The night air was crisp, and as I walked to my car, I felt the weight of exhaustion settling over me. That was when I noticed him for the first time, a fireman, standing just a little too still near the station across the street, his uniform neat, his posture relaxed, but his eyes locked onto me in a way that made my stomach twist. At first, I ignored it, dismissing it as my overactive mind playing tricks on me. He was probably just looking around, lost in thought, nothing to be afraid of. But as I pulled out of the parking lot, I saw him again, getting into his truck, and something about the way he did it felt intentional, deliberate. Still, I told myself not to be paranoid. He had every right to be on the road just like I did, but when I turned onto a side street, just to see if he was really going the same way, my hands gripped the wheel a little tighter as his headlights followed. The city is big, I told myself. Coincidences happen, but when I made another turn, then another, and his truck mirrored every move, that small thread of unease wove itself into something heavier, something that curled inside my chest and made my breathing shallow. My heart pounded as I pulled into a mini-mall parking lot, hoping, praying he would just keep driving, but he did not. He parked across the lot, far enough away to seem casual, but close enough that I could still see the glow of his headlights, the shadow of his figure sitting there, watching. I could feel his eyes on me, tracing my every move as I walked toward the storefronts, my steps quick but controlled, trying not to let him see that I was afraid. Inside the store, I pretended to browse, pretending I was not keeping an eye on him through the reflection in the glass. Minutes passed, then longer, and he did not move, just sat there, waiting. The weight of his presence pressed against my skin, an invisible force suffocating the air around me. I pulled out my phone, my fingers hovering over the dial pad. Who would I even call? The police? What would I tell them? That a man was sitting in his truck watching me? That was not illegal. That was not enough. I decided to wait him out, wandering through the aisles, pretending I was interested in things I had no intention of buying. But he did not leave. I could feel my pulse drumming against my ribs as I made a decision. I walked toward the back of the store, slipped through a side exit, and hurried to the far end of the parking lot, where my car was out of sight from where he was parked. The cold metal of my door handle sent a chill up my arm as I slid inside, locking the doors the second I was in. My breath was shaky, but I told myself I was fine. I just had to get home. Pulling out as quietly as I could, I took the long way around, circling behind the strip mall and merging onto the main road from the opposite direction. My hands were tight on the wheel, my eyes darting between the mirror and the road ahead. For a few minutes, it felt like I had lost him. Relief started to creep in, but then, in the distance, headlights, a truck turning onto the road, accelerating, closing the distance. My stomach dropped. It was him. I could feel the icy fingers of panic wrapping around my throat as I pressed my foot down, My car picking up speed, the streetlights blurring past. But no matter how many turns I made, no matter how many times I tried to lose him, he followed. It was not a mistake. It was not coincidence. He was hunting me. My mind raced with options, but every single one felt wrong. If I went home, he would know where I lived. If I stopped, what would he do? I had to think fast. The next intersection was coming up, and I made a sharp, sudden turn without signaling, tires screeching against the pavement. A risk, but a necessary one. I sped down a side street, heart pounding in my ears, and then, just as I reached the next block, I killed my headlights and swerved into a driveway, cutting the engine. I sat there, frozen, barely breathing, as his truck roared past, speeding through the intersection, his headlights searching, sweeping across the pavement like hungry eyes. And then, he was gone. I stayed there for what felt like hours, my body rigid, my breath shallow, waiting, listening. When I was sure he was no longer nearby, I drove home, taking the most complicated, winding route I could, checking my mirrors every few seconds, half expecting to see those headlights reappear, but they never did. For weeks after, I lived in a state of restless paranoia. Every time I walked to my car, I felt the weight of unseen eyes on me. Every time a truck passed by, my skin prickled with cold dread. Even now, I still check my mirrors more than I should, because the worst part is not knowing why he did it, not knowing what he wanted. The fear of what could have happened lingers, curling itself into my bones. And every time I close my eyes, I see those headlights in the dark, following me, chasing me, waiting for the moment I am not paying attention. Even now, I wonder if he is still out there, if he remembers me, if he ever found someone else to follow. The thought keeps me awake some nights, the uncertainty of it all gnawing at the edges of my sanity, because the world is full of people who walk among us, wearing faces that seem familiar, that seem trustworthy, but beneath the surface, something is off, something is wrong. And the scariest part is that you might not realize it until it is too late. I still do not know why he chose me that night, why he watched, why he followed, why he made me feel like prey in my own city. But I do know one thing. If I ever see him again, I will not hesitate. I will run. I will scream. I will make sure he knows I am not the same scared woman I was that night. But in the back of my mind, I know that if he ever truly wanted to find me again, he could. And that is the kind of fear that never really goes away. They say your instincts are there for a reason. I used to ignore that idea, but after what happened to me, I will never brush off that gut feeling again. It started as a completely normal day at work. Nothing unusual, nothing strange. I had a few tasks to finish before heading home, but somewhere in the late afternoon, a package arrived for me. I was not expecting anything, but it was addressed to me, and the delivery driver was waiting just outside the entrance. I stepped out, signed for it, and thanked him. But the moment I looked up at him, I felt something tighten in my chest. He was smiling, but it was not the usual friendly delivery guy smile. It was something else, something that made my skin prickle. His eyes lingered too long, scanning my face, my clothes, like he was memorizing me. I felt uneasy, but I brushed it off, took the package, and went back inside. I told myself I was just being paranoid, that I had nothing to worry about. But as I walked away, I could feel his eyes still on me, burning into my back. That night, I did not sleep well. Every sound outside made me tense up. Every shadow near my window made me feel like I was being watched. I knew it was irrational, or at least, I wanted to believe it was. By the time my shift ended the next day, the unsettling feeling had faded. But as I walked to my car, I saw the same delivery truck parked a little down the road. He was sitting inside, looking in my direction. My heartbeat picked up, and that gut feeling returned, but I told myself it was a coincidence. I got in my car, locked the doors, and started driving home. After a few turns, I glanced in the mirror and saw headlights behind me. The same truck. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay calm. But when I turned onto a quieter street and he followed, my hands tightened around the steering wheel. 3 miles. He followed me for 3 miles, never overtaking, never slowing down, just there, lurking in my rearview mirror, like a shadow I could not shake. My house was coming up, but I knew I could not go home. Every part of me screamed that if I let him know where I lived, it would not end well. I made a quick decision and turned into a shopping plaza instead. I parked near the store entrance, my pulse hammering in my ears. I watched the truck pull into a spot not far away. He was waiting, watching. I grabbed my bag and hurried inside, my breath shaky as I scanned the aisles for someone, anyone, who could help. The store manager was near the front, and the second I explained what was happening, his expression darkened. He nodded, telling me to stay put, as he stepped outside. That was when I spotted a police officer near the checkout. Relief flooded through me as I walked up to him, keeping my voice steady as I told him everything. He listened, then walked outside with the manager. I stayed inside, barely daring to look out the window, but after a few minutes, the truck pulled away, disappearing into the night. The officer came back and asked me for details. I told him everything, from the package drop-off to the moment I felt that sickening dread creep in. He took my report seriously, promising to check into it. Later, I got a call from the station. They had looked into the driver and found out he had a criminal background. I do not know what it was, but it was enough for them to remove him from the route. That should have made me feel safe, but it did not. The fear did not leave. It settled in my bones, in the back of my mind, always whispering that something was still wrong. And then the officer said something that made my stomach drop. He suggested maybe the guy had just been trying to get my attention, like he was interested in me. The thought made my skin crawl. I had never spoken to him before that day. He was not a familiar face. He had no reason to notice me, and yet he had followed me for miles. He had parked, waiting, watching. That was not someone trying to start a conversation. That was something else, something much worse. I tried to move on, but the paranoia had latched onto me like a sickness. Every time I saw a delivery truck, my heart would skip a beat. Every time I was alone in a parking lot, I would glance over my shoulder, scanning for a face that no longer belonged there. I checked my locks 3 times before bed. I stopped taking the same route home. I started carrying pepper spray in my pocket. I hated that he had made me afraid, but the fear had become a part of me. And worst of all, I still did not know what he really wanted. I never saw him again, but to this day, I cannot shake the feeling that he was not just a stalker. He was a hunter, and that night, I had been his prey. Maybe he had been watching me longer than I knew. Maybe he had already decided how that night was supposed to end. And maybe, just maybe, my instincts had saved my life. That thought is what haunts me the most. Because if I had ignored that fear, if I had gone straight home instead of to the store, if I had convinced myself it was nothing, I might not be here to tell this story. I used to believe that if you minded your own business and kept a low profile, the world would return the favor. That was before I met him. It started so small that I almost did not notice. A man at my son's preschool drop-off, standing by his car every morning. Just another parent. I never paid much attention at first. He was always there, a little early, leaning against his car, arms crossed, looking around but never talking to anyone. One morning, I felt his eyes on me. That was the first time I really looked at him. Just a plain man in a grey coat, thinning hair, an average face that I would forget in seconds if not for the way he stared. I forced myself to ignore it, to tell myself I was imagining things. But then I started seeing him everywhere. At the grocery store, 2 aisles away, pretending to look at cereal boxes. At the park where I took my son, sitting on a bench with no child in sight. At the gas station, standing outside his car, not even pumping gas, just watching. I told myself it was a coincidence, that he must live nearby. But deep down, I knew better. It got worse. He started waiting on my street. Every morning when I walked out to my car, there he was, parked a few houses down, pretending to check his phone. Every afternoon when I came home, his car was there again. He never approached, never spoke, but he was always there. I told my husband, who brushed it off, maybe he is just a neighbor. Maybe you are overthinking. So I tried to ignore it. But then I started getting calls. No voice, just breathing. Long, slow breaths that sent chills down my spine. The calls came at night, always from an unknown number. I changed my routine, switched grocery stores, took different routes home. But no matter what I did, he always found me. I told myself I was being paranoid until the night I saw him standing outside my house. It was late. My husband was asleep. I was in the kitchen, getting a glass of water, when I felt it, that creeping sensation of being watched. I turned toward the window, and there he was, standing across the street, under the street lamp. He did not move. He just stood there, watching. I backed away, my hands shaking so badly that I dropped the glass, shattering it on the floor. I locked all the doors, checked every window twice, but by the time I dared to peek outside again, he was gone. That was the moment I knew I had to do something. I went to the police. They listened, nodded, but without any threats or direct contact, there was nothing they could do. Keep an eye out, they said. Call if he trespasses. As if that would make me feel safer. I started keeping a knife in my purse. I stopped going out at night. My husband began to believe me when he finally noticed the car too, the same one always parked nearby. We installed cameras, but he knew. He stayed just out of reach, lurking at the edges, close enough to terrify me, but never close enough to be caught. The final straw came when my son said something that made my blood run cold. "Mommy, why does that man always smile at me?" He said it so casually, as if it were normal. I grabbed him, pulled him inside, and locked the door. That night, I told my husband we were leaving. We put the house on the market, packed up, and moved to another city within a month. I changed my number, blocked every unknown call, deleted all my social media. For the first time in years, I felt safe. Months passed, and the nightmares began to fade. I started to believe it was over, that maybe he had just given up. Until last week. I took my son to his new school, walked him to class, kissed him goodbye, and then, as I turned to leave, I saw him, standing near the entrance, hands in his pockets, smiling, as if he had never stopped waiting. My stomach twisted into knots, and my mind screamed at me to move, to run, but my feet felt rooted to the floor. He was supposed to be gone. He was supposed to be out of my life. I forced myself to look away, to breathe, to act normal, as if I had not just seen a ghost from my nightmares standing a few feet away. I walked straight to my car, locked the doors, and sat there with my hands trembling on the steering wheel. When I finally found the courage to glance in my rearview mirror, he was gone. But I knew better. He was not gone. He never really was. That night, I barely slept. Every shadow in my room felt too dark. Every sound too sharp. My husband tried to calm me down, said it could not be him, that it had to be someone else. But deep down, I knew the truth. It was him. He had found me again. The next morning, I told myself I had imagined it, that I was letting my fears control me. But as I drove to work, I saw his car, 2 lanes over, keeping pace with me. I felt my chest tighten, my pulse hammering against my ribs. I took a sudden turn down a side street, speeding up, weaving through traffic, desperate to lose him. When I finally pulled into a crowded parking lot, I waited, watching my mirrors. Nothing. No sign of him. I let out a breath, half laughing at myself for overreacting. But as I stepped out of my car, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You cannot run forever. I dropped my phone, my hands numb with fear. I could not breathe, I could not think. I rushed inside, locking myself in the bathroom, my mind racing. He was not just watching anymore. He was letting me know that he was still in control, that he would always be there. I did not know what to do. I thought moving would keep me safe, but now I realized the truth. I was never safe. That night, I did something I had never done before. I sat in the dark, waiting, knife in hand, every light in the house off, listening for the slightest sound. Hours passed. My husband was asleep, unaware of the battle waging inside my mind. And then, just past midnight, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it ring. I wanted him to know that I was not afraid anymore, even if it was a lie. When the ringing stopped, a new message appeared. See you soon. My entire body went cold. I stood, moving to the window, forcing myself to look outside. At first, nothing, just the empty street, the quiet night. But then, just at the edge of the darkness, I saw him, standing there, waiting. I closed my eyes, gripping the knife tighter. This time, I was ready, and this time, I would not run. I remember the exact moment my life started to fall apart. It was just another ordinary afternoon, a cloudy day with the air feeling thick, like something was about to happen. I was in the library, flipping through my notes when she walked past me. Sarah. We had shared a class for months, but had never really talked beyond the occasional group discussion. That day, she dropped her pen near my chair, and without thinking, I picked it up and handed it back to her. She smiled, a quick, polite smile, and thanked me. I smiled back, thinking nothing of it. That was the last normal moment I had, before everything turned into a nightmare. The next day, I noticed her looking at me in class, not in the way someone normally looks, but like she was studying me. At first, I thought maybe she was just zoning out in my direction, but then I started hearing whispers. It started with little things, classmates giving me strange looks, hushed voices stopping whenever I walked by. I ignored it until a friend finally told me what was happening. Sarah had told people I was following her, watching her, showing up outside her dorm. My stomach dropped. I barely knew her, and now, out of nowhere, I was being painted as some kind of stalker. I laughed it off at first, thinking people would realize it was ridiculous. But then the rumors started spreading fast. A few days later, a professor pulled me aside, his expression serious. He asked if there was something I needed to tell him, something about Sarah. I told him no, that I had no idea why she was saying these things. He nodded, but his eyes held doubt, like he had already decided I was guilty. That was the moment I felt the shift, the moment I realized this was not going to go away on its own. My heart pounded every time I walked through campus. People whispered when I passed. Some looked at me like I was something disgusting. Then came the messages. Anonymous texts telling me to stay away from her, calling me a creep, a freak, a danger. My hands would shake every time my phone lit up, the words eating away at me. I started skipping class, afraid of the stares, the judgment, the way the air felt thick with accusation every time I stepped outside. Then, one night, I heard a knock at my door. It was nearly midnight, and the sound made my skin crawl. I hesitated before opening it, my breath catching, when I saw Sarah standing there, her face pale and her eyes wide with something I could not place. My voice came out shaky when I asked her what she was doing there. She did not answer at first, just looked past me, like she was making sure I was alone. Then, in a quiet, trembling voice, she said, "I never told them anything." My stomach twisted. What was she talking about? I told her she needed to leave, but she stepped forward, lowering her voice. She said someone had been sending her messages too. Threats, pictures of her walking around campus, notes slipped under her door. My blood ran cold. If she was not the one spreading the rumors, then who was? She suddenly looked over her shoulder, like she expected someone to be watching. I could see the fear in her eyes. Real, raw fear. That was when I realized we had both been played. I do not know how long we stood there, frozen in realization. Then my phone buzzed. A new message. I felt my stomach twist as I glanced at it. It was a picture of Sarah standing at my door, taken from just behind me. My breath caught in my throat, my hands trembling as I slowly turned my head. The hallway was empty. There was no one there, but someone had been. Someone was watching. Sarah took a shaky step back, shaking her head. She whispered something under her breath before running down the hall, disappearing around the corner. I wanted to chase after her, to get answers, but my feet felt like they were made of stone. My phone buzzed again. Another message. This time, just 3 words. "You are next." My entire body went numb, my mind screaming at me to do something, but all I could do was stand there, feeling the weight of something far bigger than I had understood before. The accusations, the fear, the isolation. It was all planned. Someone had set this up, had turned Sarah and me into pieces of a game we did not even know we were playing. And now, I was next. I did not sleep that night. I could not. Every shadow in my room felt alive. Every sound made my heart slam against my ribs. I checked the locks on my door, over and over again, but it did not matter. Whoever was doing this, they were always one step ahead. Days passed in a blur. Sarah stopped coming to class, and no one seemed to notice or care. My phone kept buzzing. More pictures, more threats. Then one night, I woke up to the sound of my window creaking open. My room was on the 2nd floor. My breath stopped, my body frozen in sheer terror. I turned my head slowly, my eyes adjusting to the darkness, and then I saw it. A figure standing in the corner of my room, still, unmoving, watching me. My throat closed, my body refusing to move. The air was thick, suffocating. And then, as my vision cleared, I realized something that sent ice through my veins. It was me. It was my own face, staring back at me from the darkness, twisted into something I did not recognize. My own reflection, standing in the room, grinning. The last thing I remember before everything went black was the sound of my phone buzzing again, the screen lighting up the words that would haunt me forever. "We are always watching." And then, nothing. When I woke up, I was not in my dorm room. The walls were white, cold, sterile. A single fluorescent light flickered above me. I tried to sit up, but my body felt weak. My arms were restrained. Panic set in. I called out, my voice cracking, but no one answered. Then the door creaked open, and a man in a white coat stepped inside. He had a clipboard, his expression unreadable. He asked how I was feeling, his tone too calm, too careful. I demanded to know where I was, what had happened. He did not answer, just scribbled something down. Then he said something that made my blood freeze. He told me I had been found outside, delirious, rambling about someone watching me. He told me Sarah had been missing for days, that there was no evidence of anyone threatening me. No messages, no pictures, no stalker. My mind reeled. That could not be right. I had proof. My phone, My phone was gone. I told him I was not lying, that something was wrong, that someone was after me. He just nodded, like he had heard it all before. Then he left, locking the door behind him. I was trapped. Days turned into weeks. They said I was paranoid, delusional, that stress had caused a breakdown. I stopped trying to explain. The world outside that room felt like a distant memory, like something I had dreamed up. But at night, when the lights went out, I could still feel it. The presence, watching, waiting. I was not crazy. I knew the truth. And deep down, I knew one thing for certain. I would never be alone again, because they were still there, always watching, always waiting. I used to think that when relationships ended, they just ended. You move on. You deal with the heartbreak. The memories fade, and life continues. I never imagined that walking away from someone could mean inviting something much worse into my life. It started with the usual heartbreak drama, the late-night calls I ignored, the texts that went from desperate to angry to outright bizarre. I tried to be patient at first. We had been together for 2 years. She was emotional. I told myself it was normal. But then she started showing up. At first, it was outside my workplace, standing across the street, staring at me through the glass, just standing, not moving, not waving, just looking. I told myself it was harmless. She was struggling to let go, but then she started showing up at my house. The first time, I heard a noise outside my window and found her car parked on the curb. I saw her shadow behind the wheel, sitting there for who knows how long. She drove off when I turned on the porch light. The second time, she left flowers on my doorstep with a note that simply said, "I miss you." I texted her, told her this was not okay, that she needed to stop. She did not respond. A week later, I woke up to find my mailbox smashed, the wood splintered and scattered across the driveway. At first, I thought it was kids messing around, but then I saw the tire marks leading up to it, the skid pattern too deliberate to be an accident. I called her. No answer. That night, I heard glass shatter downstairs. I ran to the living room and found my front window in pieces. The cold air rushed in, and on the ground outside, in the moonlight, I saw a single red rose placed carefully on the grass. That was when I knew this was not just heartbreak. This was not sadness. This was something else. I called the police. They took a report, said they would patrol the neighborhood, but they could not do much without proof. They asked if I had security cameras. I did not. The next night, I installed them. That same night, she came back. The cameras caught her, standing in my backyard at 2 a.m, just standing near the fence, her face turned up toward my bedroom window. She stood there for hours. No movement, no sound, just watching. The footage made my skin crawl. I took it to the police, and finally, they issued a restraining order. I thought that would be the end of it. It was not. A week later, my car was keyed. Long, deep scratches carved into the paint. I knew it was her, but I had no proof. I started to feel like I was losing my mind. I hardly slept. Every little noise made me jump. Then, one night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps inside my house. My heart nearly stopped. I reached for my phone, my fingers trembling, and dialed 911. I could hear my own breathing, sharp and ragged, as I listened to the slow, deliberate steps moving through my kitchen. The operator kept asking me questions, but I barely heard her. The footsteps stopped. Silence. My bedroom door was locked, but it felt like that would not be enough. I held my breath. Then I heard it, a soft whisper from the other side of the door. My name, drawn out, slow, sickeningly familiar. The voice I once loved now, twisted into something else entirely, something unnatural. The police arrived within minutes, but by then, she was gone. The back door was wide open. There were no signs of forced entry. She had a key. That realization nearly made me sick. I changed the locks the next day, upgraded my security, got a new phone number. I even stayed at a friend's house for a while. Weeks passed. No calls, no sightings, no smashed windows, no whispers in the dark. I thought maybe, finally, she had let go. Then, last night, I came home and found a single note slipped under my front door. Just 5 words. You can never escape me. I burned the note. I slept with the lights on. This morning, I checked my cameras again, feeling sick to my stomach before I even hit play. And there she was, standing in my backyard again, closer this time, looking directly into the lens. But this time, she was not alone. There was another figure beside her, something wrong with its face, something I could not understand. The footage glitched when I tried to zoom in, but I swear I saw it smile. I swear I saw it move in a way that was not human. And now, I am sitting here, writing this, listening to the soft tapping on my window, too afraid to turn around. My breath feels shallow, my hands are shaking, and every second that passes feels like an eternity. I want to believe that if I do not acknowledge it, if I do not move, maybe it will go away. But deep down, I know the truth. This is not over. It will never be over. And I am no longer sure that the thing standing outside my window is even her anymore. I do not know how much time has passed since I last looked at the screen. I have been sitting here, motionless, hoping the tapping will stop, but it does not. It has been nearly 30 minutes now. Steady, rhythmic, patient. I cannot bring myself to pull back the curtain. My phone is right next to me, but my fingers will not move to dial 911. Something tells me they cannot help me this time. I try to convince myself it is all in my head, that I am letting paranoia take over, but deep down, I know better. The note, the figure in the footage, the way the shadows outside seem to shift and breathe. There is something else at play here, something I do not understand. And then, just as suddenly as it started, the tapping stops. Silence. But it is not the kind of silence that brings relief. It is heavy, thick, pressing in from all sides. The kind of silence that feels like something is watching, waiting, deciding. I am too afraid to turn around, but I do not need to. I hear the soft creak of my bedroom door opening behind me, and this time, I know she is not alone. I still remember that night at the convention like it happened yesterday. It was supposed to be fun, just me and my friend Jason, 2 high school kids excited to meet people who shared our interests. The event was crowded, packed with cosplayers and fans, and we blended right in, just 2 more faces in a sea of excitement. It was only when we stopped by a booth selling horror memorabilia that we noticed him for the first time. A man, probably in his late 40s, standing just far enough away to not seem intrusive but close enough that I felt his presence. He had a camera in his hands, nothing fancy, just a small digital one, and he was pointing it toward us. I figured he was taking pictures of the booth, but something in my gut told me otherwise. It was the way he adjusted the camera slightly every time we moved, as if making sure we were still in the frame. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe he was just a random attendee taking pictures of everything. But then, we walked away from the booth, weaving through the crowd, and after about 10 minutes, I noticed him again. He was still holding that camera, still watching. Jason laughed when I pointed him out, saying I was just being paranoid. But then, as we ducked into another section, looking at vintage comic books, Jason's face changed. The man was there again, standing in the aisle across from us, not even pretending to look at anything else, just holding the camera. That was when the fear started creeping in, slow at first, like the tick of a clock growing louder the more you focus on it. We decided to test it, making random turns, cutting through different sections, even stopping by a busy food court just to see if he would follow. And he did. Every single time. He never came too close, never touched us, never spoke. He just stayed a few feet away, sometimes pretending to scroll through his camera, other times just standing with that eerie stillness, like he had all the time in the world. The worst part was how unnoticed he seemed. The convention was alive with noise and movement, people rushing from one panel to the next, vendors calling out deals, friends laughing and taking selfies. No one saw the man who'd been following us for hours. No one thought it was strange that his camera was always pointed in our direction. We kept trying to shake him, moving faster, zigzagging through crowds, but no matter what we did, he was always there. I felt my skin crawl every time I turned my head and saw that same blank stare. At one point, we slipped into a restroom just to breathe, hoping he would move on if we stayed inside long enough. But when we stepped out 15 minutes later, he was standing right outside, as if he had never moved. My hands were shaking by then, and Jason was pale. We had talked about telling security, but what could we say? That some guy had been walking around taking pictures, that he had not actually done anything but stand too close? It did not sound like enough, and for all we knew, he could just claim he was taking general convention photos. Still, we decided we needed to leave. The fun was gone, replaced by the gnawing sense of something being very, very wrong. The main exit was at the far end of the building, and we moved toward it as fast as we could without running. But just as we neared the doors, Jason grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. The man had stopped walking. He was just standing still, staring right at us, camera raised as if about to take a final shot. That was when Jason snapped. He spun around and marched straight toward the man, yelling, asking what his problem was, why he had been following us all night. For the first time, the man reacted. His head tilted slightly. His mouth twitched into something that was almost a smile, but not quite. Then, just as Jason reached him, the man lowered his camera, turned around, and walked away. No rush, no panic, just a slow, deliberate walk into the crowd until he was gone. We stayed frozen for a moment, waiting, half expecting him to come back, but he never did. It was like he had been waiting for that exact moment, like he had lost interest the second we confronted him. We left the convention in a hurry, looking over our shoulders the whole way home, half expecting to see him standing outside. But we never saw him again. That night, I could not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined him still out there, somewhere, watching someone else, following them through crowds, waiting for something. And the worst part, the one thought that would not leave my head no matter how much I tried to push it away, I kept thinking about that camera, about all the pictures he took, and about the fact that somewhere, in some unknown place, there might be hundreds of photos of us, stored away, unseen, waiting for whatever reason he had taken them for. The idea of that haunted me more than the man himself. I kept picturing a dark room filled with printed photos, each one labeled with dates and locations, stacks of them arranged neatly, each one capturing different people, different places, all taken by the same man. And I wondered how many others had noticed him too late, how many others had felt that same creeping dread before realizing they had been watched for hours without ever knowing why. Jason and I never talked about it again after that night. We tried to pretend it had not happened, tried to convince ourselves that we had overreacted, that maybe he really was just some random guy who liked taking pictures. But deep down, I knew better. Deep down, I knew that people like that do not just stop. They find new faces, new places, new people to follow. And the worst part? Sometimes, late at night, when I am walking home alone, I still feel it. That same sensation, that cold prickle running down my spine. I tell myself it is nothing, that it is just my imagination playing tricks on me. But then, I catch a glimpse of something in the corner of my eye, A shadow that moves just a second too late. A figure that disappears the moment I turn my head. And every time I see it, I cannot help but wonder if it is him, if he ever really stopped, or if he is still out there, watching, waiting, camera in hand, ready to capture his next set of photos.